of, from memory, we have one that I know we've definitely both seen. Actually, many times. Many times.
Right. Okay.
So
we know this thing.
And
the thing is, what's the thing? Quo Vadis. 1951. Shall I do the blurb?
Yep.
After fierce Roman commander Marcus Licinius becomes infatuated with beautiful Christian hostage Lygia, he begins to question the tyrannical leadership of the despotic emperor Nero. This is directed by Mervyn Leroy and several other people. Writing credits, let's go with the top one, John Lee Mahin for screenplay, but also based on a novel by Hendrik Sienkiewicz. I apologize.
That is which.
I apologize. Robert Taylor as Marcus Licinius, Debrah Kerr or Carr if you're British, as Lygia, and then we have Peter Ustinov as Nero, and that of course is the unforgettable scene of the burning of Rome.
And him playing the lyre and singing most out of tuneness, whereas I think that Peter Ustinov can sing in the tuneness most definitely, but this was
I would refrain from singing if he couldn't. But
oh my god, that's
he was nutso.
And
oh my god,
I and you, I'm sure you also, we saw it first in a German dub.
Yeah.
And the German dub, is interesting about the German dub is that Ustinov did himself in a German dub in German.
Mm-hmm.
So the full singing, the out of tune singing in the English version and the out of tune singing in the German version are both him.
Still him. He was actually quite the linguistic wonder. He spoke so many languages.
He spoke even a good. He spoke enough of Dutch to when he was given something to say, he could say it properly, which is a pronunciation issue.
That's pretty much all you need for actors.
And he's of course Ustinov. He's either first or second generation Russian. And so that's where he got his language learning from family to start with.
This is one of the few films with Robert Taylor that I actually saw, because I don't remember terribly much about his career, but he's awesome.
He's awesome.
He really holds it, even though he doesn't have like a very specific flavor of actor, which for this role is actually quite good, because you need to come with him, as your generic person needs to come with him to experience all of this and to I mean, of course there's lots of Christian persecution in here.
It's from a Christian novel about just after Jesus' death. Saint Peter, or not Saint Peter yet, but Peter comes to Rome to evangelize basically, and Lygia and her adoptive parents are definitely into it, and Marcus Vinicius is not. He's very much a Roman doing Roman things, you know.
Yeah, he's just your average well-to-do Roman citizen.
And
how far up was the ladder was he? Because he was he.
He was.
Or his family was quite far up the ladder, as far as.
I think he was very close to have an actual triumphal entrance before the emperor for a campaign well fought, and he was just one step under that. But an interesting thing about you skipped one on the list is Leo Genn as Petronius. And I saw this guy only in this movie.
That's
it
why
was really good.
I skipped him, but after this movie, you don't forget Petronius.
And I don't think I've seen the guy in anything else.
Yeah, maybe he was a stage actor.
Yeah, and a little anecdote, the girl that plays the slave girl that Petronius takes up with, that role was almost Sophia Loren's, but her English at the time was not good enough, and she was going to be. They thought she was pretty enough. They thought that she was right, but her English was not good enough, and so she went away, learned her English, and then less than 10 years later, she is in Hollywood.
Yeah, this is 1951. She would have been so young. Yeah.
But by 1961, she's a famous movie star, and her
Yeah.
English is very good
Yeah.
for second language. It's excellent. So the girl who plays the slave girl, I'll put the name up here, is also very good. And again, I don't think she may have been in one of the Egyptian movies, the one that I did see. But I don't think I've seen her in anything else. So it was filmed in Cinecittà in Italy. That's why the sun, the way it looks, is very that Italian sunniness that is
that
real.
gives this one a different flavor than most of the Roman movies, Roman era movies of that day and age, because they filmed a whole lot of it in Hollywood itself. But Cinecittà has that's the best place to film. You know, even Doctor Who did their Roman episode filmed in Cinecittà. The series Rome was filmed in Cinecittà. That was the BBC production.
And then it's just perfect. And so
you can't get better than that.
When they're riding around the countryside and you can see it, I do believe that's also Italy itself.
And
because
again,
the way the
I know. And also the flora, the fauna, the ground, it isn't the desert in
no.
The backlot desert of Hollywood backlots. Yeah.
The story is religiously tinted, and if you are not allergic to that, it's a fine story.
For 51, they didn't. I would say they didn't overdo it, but you have to completely go with the Christian scenario.
That is the story. I mean,
that is the story.
If you don't mind that is the story, then this is a fine. There
was a whole series of movies. The Robe. There was a whole bunch of movies that was like, okay, we're doing a Roman era, but we're doing it from the Christian perspective, and you respect that. You watch it because that is telling you something about. This is what we believe is being a true Christian.
Yeah. Historically, we now know, and in 51 maybe not so much, that some of the stuff, Nero did not burn Rome actively, and I think that's in the movie is actually also, it is an accident, but he really enjoys the fact that...
He's not going to send anybody into...
Yeah, and that is not true.
Probably didn't have a fire brigade.
They did
capable of dealing with it.
That no, but they had some sort of fire brigade. After this, they had a better fire brigade, but Nero actually, the real Nero, actually went into Rome and helped try and fight the fire.
Cities burn. They found this out after the Middle Ages. Cities will burn.
Yes.
So you have to not build with wood. But anyway,
that's not an issue at this point, or it is not a possibility at this point. But they were building in concrete, Roman concrete, that people lost the recipe to, and we still don't know how they did it.
Yeah.
But he did go into Rome to help fight the fire. It was very clearly that it became a lost cause, and that's when they evacuated and they said it gave up on it. But the whole singing while Rome burns, it's not true. There's a lot of other things that are wrong with
he was nuts, though.
He was nuts.
That is known.
He was nuts, but he wasn't as nuts as Caligula, who was very, very nuts. And
who also features in quite a few of these movies.
Yes.
Because these emperors were all after the year 0 and after year 30. 33. So in the Christian historical placement, you're not going to see Julius Caesar. You're not going to see Augustus.
Augustus was there for a long time. I'd have to check the dates,
but not until that.
Tiberius is usually the earliest one they get.
And then you get Caligula. I'm sure. I don't know if there's anything before it, but.
Tiberius Caligula, Claudius Nero.
Well, there you go.
And then, that's the end of Caesar's line. But what is true is that there was persecution of whomever was not the upper class Romans, so of Jews and of Christians.
Well,
because Jews and Christians are still the same thing at this moment.
Monotheism, they're doing a version of monotheism, where basically saying, no, this God is for me and all the other gods.
That was not what it was about.
And the Romans were polytheists.
The Roman
So-
the Roman persecution of any minorities had nothing to do with religion or anything like that. It had to do with practical things that you have to blame somebody for mess ups.
Well, it's quite belabored in the robe.
Yeah, but that's
you know,
it's a similar time when it was made, and
Yeah.
that is also
almost
full
the same
of
year,
of historically inaccurate things of the same
Sure.
type.
Yes.
Because the narrative, especially for Quo Vadis and for the robe, is the narrative is very Christian orientated,
Christian.
and there is a Christian history written where Rome persecutes Christians specifically, and that from actual historical viewpoint is not true. Yes, Rome persecuted people, but because they were different and easy to persecute, and you had to blame somebody for mess ups, especially the fire. It needed to blame they needed to play the blame game and it not be them, so it has to be somebody else. Who can we pick? Who is somebody else? Oh yeah, Christians or somebody else.
I mean, it's a very tiered culture. You got the the top dog citizens, then you have other people, and then you have slaves. So there's like classes of society, and you were not moving through up and down classes of society.
No.
That was not happening. Even if you watch, I mean, yes, in Spartacus. Is it Spartacus? No, in Ben Hur. Sorry, in Ben Hur, he does actually move up and down classes, but he gets adopted by this.
Yeah, adoption is about the only way.
The Romans were okay with that because you need to
adoption.
find an heir.
Adoption was the only way, and if it was a slave with a master, and that the master wanted to marry the slave, the master could flee the slave. And whether or not the slave could run off is another matter, but then they could marry. But if you were lower down, and you could be adopted. They took adoption more seriously than they took marriage, really. Adoption, and then you become an heir, so fortune goes to you. The Julius Caesar actually adopted Octavian as his heir because he had no child of his own,
and he was a
nephew.
He was a nephew, so it was a close enough relative. But even if it hadn't been a nephew, the adoption would have been proper.
Yeah, and so Octavian inherited Caesar's fortune, which was maybe not as big as he wanted it to be, but that's other film and other thing.
Film.
And
yes,
what I liked about, because I saw this in, like I said, the German version. It doesn't really matter if it's a German version or the English version.
No.
The translation was fine, and the German acting work is fine. What I liked for it is that yes, it's a Christian movie, but it didn't feel to me preachy. It was more of a depiction of this is what we think that Christians were like at that time. And I was already aware that this is probably not quite how it was. It is slanted. I do realize that, and I did realize that. But I thought it was pretty honest the way they put it down.
What it was... I won't say belabored, but they took their time to do was when they're in the arena and they send the animals in. Yeah, and I think that was scary.
Yeah, and I think I do think that the arena scene dragged on, and I think it was because it was so.
I said maybe not belaboring, but it was a bit long.
Yeah, and I think it's because, and I've seen it in other movies, that when an event to stage costs so much money, they want to make the most of it, and they sometimes let it be on stage on screen a little bit too long.
But if you pit it against the chariot scene at Ben Hur, the chariot scene can basically never get too long because it is so good. But that's in the original writing is the reason you have super much reason to watch it. You have these two guys up against each other. We understand that how deeply it runs for them, and then you want your action scene. So in this, it's okay. We're throwing we don't like the Christians. We're throwing them to the lions, literally. And I felt for this movie that's what they wanted. That was one of the reasons they made the movie.
Yeah, and I think it actually served its purpose because nobody ever did it again. They did it exhaustively. and I think what is also important to show is that these things of this type did happen.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting story of when the barbarians sacked Rome in 360 AD, they came into Rome and the Roman society fell, and the very, very first thing they did, almost the very first thing they did, was ban all games and gladiatorial blood games and these sort of things, because to the barbarians these things were too barbaric. And that's interesting. Yeah. But the Romans did do this stuff, and the fact that it's in this movie is important. I'm glad most people decided, okay, we've seen it now, we don't want to see it again. Thank you.
But at least it's there, so for the ages they can say we gave it a place in cinematic history. We showed, because in 51 they were only ramping up their Roman era movie, the antiquities movies. They did so many of them in the 50s and 60s.
This is the second wave of it, because they did stuff in the 30s as well. For a third wave, because they did the complete wave in the silent era as well.
Oh wow!
They did the silent Cleopatra. They did the silent Ben Hur. They did that pharaoh thing that I saw, the German pharaoh, Weib Pharaoh, which is in the same style. There were more, and then in the 30s, they redid some of this stuff. Not the Ben Hur, but they redid the they did the sound Cleopatra, and so there was a small wave of that, but then more happened, and now it's
when they had color and they had CinemaScope,
and you want to do, oh my god, let's CinemaScope,
and it is nice. And then my experience of that is that I was watching them on, in our case, German television, because they carried the big movies until we got BBC. And then we watched some on the BBC, and they were beautiful movies. But in the cinemas, in the 80s, 90s, until Gladiator, the movie, it was complete silence regarding antiquities movies. That's period pieces, and I like period pieces.
And the reason for that is in 51 they made this. They kept going until about
late 60s usually.
No, the early 60s. The last one that was the big movie, it's the one Sophia Loren is in. It's the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, which I'm going to do a thingy about, because there's a lot to be said about that. It is the prettiest movie, but it failed at the box office. And before that, and it's a couple of years earlier, Cleopatra did not fail at the box office, but the thing cost so much that they even it didn't fail.
So stunning.
Even with the bumps on seats, they could not earn back. And that's when they started to go, okay, these movies are more, there is an end to what we can spend and what we can get.
Because they could actually make it. They found out how they did it so much that they got better and better at it, and more extravagant.
And more expensive.
And now with the big action movies, you have that similar thing, is how much can you spend on a movie and still make money? Can you spend 300 million and expect to be in the plus at the end?
Some
if you
do
make the great movies, then
some do and some don't.
But if you miss, so if that one, that the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire just was over the top, in the sense that they're on the decline, but they hadn't figured. That's the problem with being the last, right? Because you don't know when the decline is going to set in, and it falls off a cliff. I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
People at some point are just done with it. I think the same thing happened with the big Hollywood musicals.
Yeah. Yeah, they were just musicaled out. Yeah,
and at some point it's like, we're done. And then Barbra Streisand went on for a bit, and that was good, because she had a different quality. But after that, it was done.
Yeah, the Streisand ones actually failed mostly at box office. We enjoyed them, but they failed at the box office. The Funny Girl and
but still people still talk about them.
Yeah, but the fact that something still talk about doesn't mean it didn't fail at the box office. FYI, the fact that we're watching it in German means that it's still a foreign language for us because we're Dutch. Just a little thingy.
But we understand it very well.
Yeah, but we learned it. You have to go and learn it. It's not a given, you know.
Yeah.
The reason we're watching it in German is because that's where the movies were on. Dutch TV wouldn't show them, and we didn't have British TV. So
the thing with these big Hollywood movies is that they are expensive. If you're in a small country like the Netherlands, and with a small I mean small, there's not that kind of money available for. So commercial television brings us a lot more big Hollywood movies.
Yeah, and
other countries as well. But
and specifically for a movie like this for Dutch TV, because we also have like a lack of time on TV to show a 2 hour and a half movie about a religious subject that is from 1951.
Oh,
There's
sure
so many other things.
On the evangelical station.
They never showed it. It's just there's no room on what they call PBS, Dutch PBS. We have now commercial, and still commercial is not interested in
not
doing
in this
1951
it's too
movie.
Old.
It's too old.
And that's the thing, and we discussed this in the WandaVision time that we reviewed WandaVision, is that the whole concept of big old movies getting to television is not true all over the world. And not even native. I mean, not even Dutch movies get repeated on Dutch television. Sometimes there's like, I don't know, 20 years between showings. I guess you're expected to buy it on DVD or something like that.
An old Dutch movie, unless it's made by a chappie called Haanstra who made art movies. It's not if it's black and if it's black or white. And Paul Verhoeven never did if it's black and white and it's not Paul Haanstra, it's not going to be on Dutch television at all. Yeah. So you can forget that.
There's one channel. There's the historical Dutch channel called Ons.
Yeah, and they do Haanstra movies, but they don't do anything
like the nostalgia channel.
But that's a very like
since cable. Yeah.
It's cable, and it's like since the last 8 years maybe.
Yeah. So growing up, or you're going back for when we were young.
And the thing is, if not on BBC, I wouldn't know where you would watch Quo Vadis on a television right now.
We wouldn't have known movies like Quo Vadis existed if we didn't have German television.
German and BBC are the only ones that would show it.
But even BBC, I think by that time.
No,
I was already 15.
I saw it on BBC.
Yeah, I'm sure they had it on at some point. It's just that I wouldn't have known to watch that movie. I wouldn't have known to. So where do you find movies? That's the thing. It's like I find them because I like certain actors, and then I just look what they've done, or I'm going. I want a certain genre. What did they make in the 50s or the 60s or the 30s or whatever? But you have to start pursuing it. I don't know if that's true with streaming media now. You could probably, but
I understand from reflections in TV shows and other media that American television, if you have an American television or streaming whatever,
always old movies.
There is always an old movie you can watch, and I don't know if that is hype, and because I only tell us if that is hype. But here, if you want to watch an old movie, that's
you have to pursue it yourself.
Yeah.
And so we do that because we love movies.
And we love movies. and I did, for what it is, I like this one for what it is. Debrah Kerr and Robert Taylor are really good.
But I didn't experience it as slow last time I saw it.
I think that, yes, it's going to be slow, but I don't think it matters. It's not that kind of movie.
What I would be interested in is what's it called again when they do I'm just blanking on the word when they make it prettier going on Blu-ray or something like that.
The remastering.
Restorated version, because last time I saw it was certainly not restorated, and I think the movies like this benefit from that a lot. Putting on nice on HD media, and there should be media.
I think it's straight up an MGM movie, and I think there's great prints of it available, so to redo it. But the reason it's going to go at the bottom of the pile is the subject matter of the religious slant, and that's not going to help it.
But if that's your thing, then I would say this is a recommendation, because
Yeah, but it is
there's
not
not a huge amount of films that
yes.
that really put it in historical context from that perspective.
And like I said, even if you're not religious, this is still, if you keep in mind that it was made by people who are, it is still pretty good viewing. I enjoyed it really. I've seen it like 5-6 times.
Why did we enjoy it? Because the characters are gripping. The actors do a great job. You got Robert Taylor acting his heart out. You got Debrah Kerr. She just has to stand there, and it's already awesome. And Peter Ustinov is just
stellar. He's always stellar.
That's top. And I felt that Peter Ustinov lifted it into a more modern. The rest of them could still okay, it's 51, so it's kind of 50s, but we're coming out of the 40s. We're still tasting what 50s going to be like. But Peter Ustinov was like, boom, I'm right here. I'm modern. I am taking you all the way. And this guy who plays Petronius, Genn, I agree that he as well was modern. He there's no feeling of this is too old.
I liked specifically about a Petronius character that Marcus Vinicius gets in with Lygia and they become Christian, but Petronius does not. He stays a full Roman. He's a Roman. But he lives and dies as a Roman.
Yes.
And it's beautiful.
It is, and also that was also done without slanting it.
Yes.
It was not saying he doesn't have a right to be a Roman. He should be a Christian. It wasn't that kind of slant. It's like, okay, you've got the journey to become a Christian, and those people who already are in a world where people are not generally. And you got this guy who is
a Roman.
I am a Roman,
and he stands for a Roman thing, and he lives and dies as a Roman.
Yeah, as a scene you never forget either.
No, exactly. And I think Petronius may have made the movie for me. I think. I mean, Robert Taylor, yes, but
well, the thing with
the storyline of Petronius makes the movie for me. All the actors make the movie all together, of course.
Yeah. But I think the storyline of the two main, Marcus and Lygia, is slower. It's like the whole movie. So those moments that you get Petronius' story and you get Nero's story, that's where the movie, it becomes 3D. It has more than just. So, I think all of those things together. Otherwise, the movie would be too long, because it's a almost 3 hours, 2 hours 51 minutes.
A little bit shorter if you have it on DVD.
So it'll be about 15 minutes shorter. But it's a long sit, and I think I've seen it maybe 3 times in total. And the first time it was too long for me because I was very young.
I think you could probably watch it in 3 pieces if you say I have a little time, but not too much and.
I do that with old movies sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
I'm okay with that.
And like
watch
I said,
half now, watch half tomorrow.
The pacing it's going to be on. Yeah, it's 51. It's going to be a little bit on the slow side, but from memory, it never bothered me. But I was aware of it, that the speed is not the way it is now.
Yeah, even 30 years ago when we saw it for the first time, it was like, okay, we're sitting now for a 50s movie, an early 50s movie. Accept it. That's how 50s movies are. But if you're watching this to this point, you are probably quite okay with 50s speed, because it's it has its niceness. It doesn't all have to fly.
Yeah, they get there is a wonderful scene where there is the party at Nero's place, and Nero takes a walk down a couple of the steps, and you see a lot of people sitting there, and you can just enjoy this party. These Romans, the clothing is not quite right because everybody's wearing a 50s corset underneath, but you know what? I have big breasts, so I understand that you want a little support. But it's beautiful. It is just a beautiful scene of beautiful people, of how a 50s impression of a Roman party at the highest. And they take their time to walk through it, and that is nice. I like that.
Yeah, and during all of that era of making films about Rome, they didn't know yet. What we know now is that the walls weren't blank. The walls were all painted with a lot of colors and a lot of
the statues.
Pictures. The statues were painted and sometimes wore robes. They weren't aware of that. That's just historically they found out much later. So when you watch the Rome series from the BBC from about 15 years ago, they knew it then and adjusted. So it was a lot more colorful.
Yeah,
but
this is more
that's a question of historians telling them what's what.
Yeah, this is not one that asked historians much, but this is sort of what an impression you can get from your history book when you're in high school. It fits that definitely. This would fit in this quite definitely.
Yeah. And now we would have a different idea about it.
That's 50s.
And we always will have a different idea looking back on history.
Oh, in 20 years, that Rome series, BBC Rome series, they go, how could they have done that?
Didn't they know? No, they didn't.
They didn't know.
Yeah.
So and I think it's actually the historical accuracy of a film like this is just less important, because that is not what it's about. It is about a story. And the characters and how it looks is more of a sketch than it is.
It is
reality.
Yes, because this used to be a novel, and then it was made into a screenplay. So it looks like they tried to cram a lot in. It feels like they shied away from the 3-hour mark. Now I think you could cram that in much faster because we have faster storytelling.
I think you would probably be better at selecting what to tell and what to leave out.
Yeah.
I do think that the film is correct in the way films are supposed to be. So if you say something at the beginning, you should let it come back later. Yeah. They do all of that really well. So the screenplay as such is a good screenplay. But there may be 2 or 3 things you would leave out and maybe enhance a couple of things a little bit more, so give it a little bit more time. But I don't have any major complaints about it.
No.
Some of it I sort of go, okay, yeah, that is what's like the scene in of the lions and stuff like that. Do you have to show all of that because it happens? Yes, you should actually mention it, but they overshow it. No, they don't overshow it because they did
it properly. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, they did properly.
They did that.
And but if you're going to do it again and you leave it out, you sort of go, no, that's not real. These things did happen.
Yeah. If it's a remake of this, you should do it again. But you should do it as we want to view it now, or as we want to show it now, depending on who you are.
And you should.
But if you're another production doing something else, you can just basically say, "This is done. It's done."
Yeah. But a new production.
Like Spartacus did all the crucifixions.
And if you do the Spartacus story or this story again, you should do in the Spartacus story. You should do a crucifixion, but you can keep it short, and you can do the lines, but you keep it short. The problem with it, and that's what the Hollywood problem is, that if you're going to get lions, they cost money. You might as well do 5 or 10 minutes.
It's very dangerous filming with them.
And modern movies are hopefully smart enough to realize, yes, we're going to get that lion in at so much money for 2 seconds of film.
And there's a lot more health and safety now. So.
No, but okay, you do it for 2 seconds of film. Yeah. You don't draw it out from another 5-minute scene because you get a bad movie. This screenplay as is done modernly would be a bad movie, but because it's done then in their way, it is not a bad movie.
70 years ago.
It's 70 years ago.
Yeah, and there's a huge amount of development in how we make movies, what we make movies about. I mean, there's the whole 70s strange movienesses, and then the 80s, all these action flicks and stuff. In the 90s it's sort of like question mark, but now in the 2000s you're looking at, I think it's interesting that they made Gladiator, and I was expecting, and then they made Troy and a couple of these things. I was expecting a lot more, and it never happened. So it may be just an end to how much you can do
A big difference between 1951 and now is that now, if we want to see any movie about or a documentary about the Roman times, it's easy to do. In 51, you go to the cinema this week and they have this, and the next week they'll have something else.
Yeah.
And this is not going to come back. It may come back as a revival, but it's pretty rare. And so you can do a Quo Vadis type film every year because one of the 52 weeks that you go to the cinema, you will get now a Roman movie, and that is fine until it actually runs out. But once you get into our modern age, because this is not the age of information, we're in the age of information. 51 is not. The age of information makes it possible for me to go on internet, on YouTube, and get any number of films or documentaries, good documentaries, BBC stuff, on Rome and how it really was, on every facet of it, just on YouTube. And
so then the question remains: why would you remake this movie?
You wouldn't. That's why they don't.
So far, they haven't. You would want to have a message. Well, the thing is full of messages. So boom, that's one angle. The other one is to say, we can do this better.
It has to be better because people could see this original.
But you're not going to do this to say, we are going to tell you about history. No. We're going to tell you about the Romans, because we have all those documentaries we've seen. There's so much to see. There's the Rome series. You're going to have to come up with something a lot better to say what is important about this movie that needs to be retold.
Yeah, and if you have like a Cleopatra was made in the silent era. Yeah. It was made in the black and white sound era. It was made again with Liz Taylor in the color era with widescreen and everything. And then for a long time, the next time it was made was for TV. We haven't seen a cinematic Cleopatra because we've seen all the other ones, and you can get them so easily.
The thing is, you cannot trump the Liz Taylor Cleopatra.
Yep, you cannot.
It's so mega.
And until you can, then people will think about, should we do one? But since this one is available, in the black and white era, the silent movie version was already gone, and it was not available to rewatch. And in the Liz Taylor era, the black and white version was gone.
You couldn't go buy it on DVD. You couldn't get it on streaming media, and that's a different world. It's a completely different world. So
and in this modern world,
we're not going to be looking at remakes so much.
And I'll look it up, but I think the Quo Vadis may have had a silent era version as well.
Look that up.
I will look it up.
Yeah.
Certainly is the type that would have had one. And I don't think it's going to get remade at all, because this version is so good that to top this in a cinema, forget it. We've seen one, so there is only like a Hallmark or something like that, and they don't have the money to top this.
Yeah, you'd have to have,
because this is really big money.
You'd have to have a splendid budget for this. There is no other way.
And there's just nothing in Hallmark
or
can
you
do.
Have to redevelop what you want to show here, because
it's possible they did the book properly, and then you're maxed out on everything.
If this is the right way to do it, there's nothing to be said anymore. Like the Cleopatra one, it's been done. So
of Cleopatra, you can still say there's going to be more history that we have found after the Liz Taylor version.
Well, I did a whole bunch of Cleopatra in Rome, in the Rome series as well. So it's like,
but it's not a dedicated thing anymore.
She was
the only Cleopatra that has happened is a film Cleopatra, not a film, a TV Cleopatra in 2 parts, a 3-hour thing. And I think maybe like a Hallmark. It wasn't a Hallmark, or something, some network or other, but it was meant a television version, and they tried their best not to compete with the Liz Taylor one, because you can't.
You can't. Some things just are right the way they are.
Yes.
Is that our opinion?
That is our opinion.
That's our opinion.
And we're sticking to it.